All right, guys. Our next presenter is someone that if you've been to SummerStrong ever, you probably know of. He spoke here a number of times. He's a close friend of mine personally. It's really cool about this next gentleman. Well, we had a speaker that was supposed to come. He got sick literally a week ago. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we have this. What are we going to do? And Josh and I got talking. We're like, man, Brandon's been doing some amazing things lately, as usual. And we're like, yeah, he hasn't spoken in a while. And of course, I called Brandon. I'm like, hey, man, I'm watching what you're doing every day. You're one of my close friends. I'd love for you to unpack it a little bit more. And of course, because Brandon's always game, he's like, yep, no sweat. I'll be there. And I'm like, who figures out a SummerStrong presentation in like 72 hours? But you don't have to figure out a big presentation if this is what you live. And he lives this plus one mantra. And I will say that I have seen probably no one I know that's changed as much as Brandon has over the years. And it's always, whether it's fast or gradual, it's always forward and it's always has intent. And I have a lot of respect for this man. I love this man and I'm excited to have him speak to you guys. Brandon Lilly.
What's up, guys? We just crossed into PR territory a little bit ago. Coming up on 30 miles. I've never done that on my feet. 26.2 a few times. Never gone here. The good news is still PR in every step. 21 miles to go. The bad news is my knee is being a rowdy motherfucker right now. But I just keep telling myself there's somebody out there that I'm walking for that would trade it all to feel this pain, you know?
Good morning. It's day 1085 since I made a conscious decision to live to be 75, or at least give it hell. And that started with a conversation with my father, and it's something that's far and few between. My father and I grew up in the same household. He worked very hard. He put a roof over our head, but he was gone a lot. He worked hard, and I was an asshole. So it prevented a lot of deep conversation because it was usually me getting reprimanded for the things that I'd done that day or the classes that I disrupted that day and whatnot. But my father decided to talk to me one day about the fact that his father, as well as his father's father, passed away at 73 years old on basically the same day. So he was asking me, I was huge at the time. I was 348 pounds. And he talked to me and he said, why are you training so hard to feel so bad? And it gave me a complete pause in my life because I was literally training to hold and maintain an idea of what I should have been rather than listening to that calling voice inside of myself that was telling me where to go opposite of what I thought I could be. So as I went about this and I started making a plan and thinking on that, I was actually invited to go to Finland. And I was invited to go there to do a lifting competition, some grip challenge, a deadlift, maybe a bench press. And I was pretty nervous about it because at the time, as I said, I was 345 pounds. I was not in great shape. I was not super strong. I'd been working for Sorinex for a little bit, so at that point in time, I felt like I needed to represent that well, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. So I went to the competition. I did well in the grip challenge, did well in the deadlift challenge. That was all fine. But that conversation stayed with me, and it didn't feel the same when I competed. It didn't feel the same when people recognized me for something that I had done, not so much the things that I had just done. They kept talking about your lifts before, the videos that they saw with certain so-and-sos at the backyard meet of the century or at Dan Green's gym or on and on and on. And I felt myself being pulled into this life of an echo, this life where I was telling the stories and reliving the stories of who I had been rather than actualizing even the potential of who I could become. So I go to this sauna, and I cannot recall. I looked it up, and I still don't know. So if anyone in here is fluent in Icelandic or Finnish or anything like that, there's a couple words within that culture range that basically mean until tomorrow. And this guy shared with me the idea that in Finland, they have the highest suicide rate in the world. So they adopted a word that it doesn't matter what it takes to get you through until tomorrow. And I was very much in a place, I've talked about it here, where I was at a point where I didn't think that life was worth living because I thought my best days were behind me. I thought that the triumphs and the achievements and the things that I could do, the mountains that I could climb, the things that I could feel success wrapped in were behind me. I'd spent almost 20 years pursuing strength at a maximum level. I thought that that was the definition of strength. So I walk into this sauna, and it was actually a sauna day with several of the lifters there. They kind of set up an event where smoked meats, breads, cheeses, just charcuterie type stuff. There were some alcoholic beverages. There was really whatever you needed until tomorrow. And in these conversations in the sauna, and I don't know if anybody else understands, when you're doing something like that, and it was very aggressive. I mean, this is the land where sauna comes from, so they take it very, very seriously. The temperatures were extreme. The contrast between ice baths and sauna was very extreme. Stress was very extreme in that moment. So you have a bunch of big, strong men, Russians, Ukrainians. I mean, it seemed like those guys were friends then. Why can't we be now? But nevertheless, Russians, Ukrainians, Swedes, Finnish, UK, everybody was there, and we were all talking, we were all sharing, and we all had similar stories. We were all in some way broken men that were trying to absolve, maybe deceive the truth of who we were inside with the physicality of who we were outside. So back to the sauna, I walk in and it's like, no towels, nudity only. Well, great. So I walk in, towel on, very, very much an insecure person at this point because everything was revolved around how big I was, how strong I was, how, whatever you could do at a existential level of what people thought of me was what prevented me from walking in there completely nude. So like this Yoda type guy is sitting there and he said, sit. So I sat opposite of him. He said, why the towel? I don't want to be naked. And he said, then you've missed the point of sauna. He said, sauna is a community event. He said, when you come in, we see you for what you are. You're afraid to look at yourself for what you are. You're lying to yourself. He said, the most beautiful truth is the naked truth. It's exactly what you are in your dreams. It's exactly what you are in your knee-jerk reactions. It's exactly what you are in your thoughts that very seldom make it to the surface and become real. But it is the naked truth of who you are. So I started thinking about myself in that context. Who am I? Who is this person beyond this hulking exterior except a scared little boy to say who I want to be, what I want to do, and how I want to feel. And that was very true. I was very unsure of those things. My life was very disrupted at that point. The choices that I had made had been awful. I'd hurt people that loved me. I'd hurt people that were very close to me. I deceived myself in the deception of others. So along the way, I started thinking and started talking to people, which I do. I talk to people everywhere I go. But nevertheless, I was kind of looking at this idea that if 1,000 bad choices put me in the hole I'm in, then 1,001 good choices could get me out. And that's where the essence of the +1 mentality began for me. I started looking at every person, not maliciously as an opportunity, but lovingly as an opportunity for doors to open, for conversations to be had, for meals to be shared, for a beer to be poured. I looked at ways that my presence in the presence of someone else could enhance them more than it enhanced me. And the trick about that is it always worked backwards. The willingness to listen. And I even put this in my story the other day on Peace, Love, and Meat. Someone asked me, I mentioned that Bourdain was a kind of an idol of mine, someone that I looked up to. And it's an odd thing to say about someone who takes their own life, but I understand that because I felt very close to that moment many, many times in my life. And it's because I exhaust myself on being the best that I can be, at looking at the ways that I can improve myself. And sometimes the weight of not feeling that I'm getting any closer becomes very, very heavy. So it's not that. It's not that I want to live this poetic life and take myself out one day. Absolutely not. It's the idea that we're all different, that we are all coming from hard, challenging backgrounds, that this morning, somebody in this room, at least one, but I would guess more than that, got a phone call they didn't want to take, got a text message they didn't want to receive. So when I was asked, if you could sit down with Anthony Bourdain, what question would you ask him if you're at dinner? You got one question, what would you ask him? And it's the same question I ask everyone. How are you doing, truly? And I just wait. And over and over and over and over, since this time, the stories that have been shared with me sound a hell of a lot like me. I'm looking at people that have been where I've been, who've achieved things that I want to achieve, who have done things that I want to do, who have gone places I want to go, and somewhere in their story, they were just like me. They were unsure of the next step. They were unsure of who could call if they needed somebody. They were unsure of how they were going to get their next paycheck. They were unsure of where home was. Many, many nights I've slept in my truck because of choices I made. Many, many nights I've wondered, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I still here? But since I was little, since I was very, very small, I've had a belief inside of me that I was born to be great. And I didn't know why, and I still don't know why. But I stood up here years ago thinking I was great. And when Bert asked me last minute to speak, I had a very, very different feeling about it. I was very uncertain, somewhat uncomfortable, but of course, like he said, I jumped at the chance because those things promote growth. Those things promote drive to find something out so that you can do something respectable in front of your peers and in front of people that you respect. So I wanted to share my story. I wanted to talk about things that mean a lot to me, and I wanted to talk about the process of just overcoming the next moment. And it's funny that this all happened because I heard a story the other day. There's a young boy been riding his horse through the woods and gotten lost. Got off the horse, sits down and starts to cry. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where home is. I don't know how to get out of the forest. And the horse looks down, kind of nudges the boy, and he said, "Can you see your way out?" And the little boy said, "No." And he said, "Can you see your next step?" And he said, "Then take it." So that's really what my life has become. I stopped trying to paint this imaginary vision of what my life should be and started accepting what my life is and understanding that you're lost or you don't know where you are as two different ideas. Lost is you are completely fucked. You have no idea, no sense of direction, no possible way to determine what to do next. But if you don't know where you are, and you know where you are relative to where you don't know where you are, that was kind of confusing. But if you know where you're standing and you're firm in that, then you can choose a direction. And you can know which way you're going, and sometimes that means backtracking, sometimes that means going forward faster than others, but always calculate the next step. That's the only one that we can control. And I wanted to really start this thing with a quote from one of my friends. It's on the heels of being one of my friends, and that's for Terrence Mitchell. He passed away, and two men that I really wanted to speak about today as having influence on me, and they're both gone. And I think that for a long time, and even still, I'm very sad about both of them. And if I get upset, I apologize. But I'd read some Cormac McCarthy, and when I met Terrence, that became one of our bonding grounds, was writing, reading, specifically Cormac McCarthy. And Cormac McCarthy has this amazing quote in a beautiful book, but he said, "You never know what worse luck your bad luck saved you from." And I'll say it again so you can process it. You never know what worse luck your bad luck saved you from. And I tell you that quote, one, to honor Terrence and the reinvigoration of reading and writing and journaling. These are my journals. These are full of my stories. These are full of this truth that I don't want to say out loud. They're just full of all of my fears. But it got me going again, and it got me reading again, and it got me finding quotes like that I could parallel to my life. And Bert asked me to talk a little bit about who I was versus who I am. Well, on January 26th of 2014, I had a catastrophic bilateral knee injury. I was in LA. I was at the Staples Center. I just won 2 world championships in Australia. I was pretty much as high as I could imagine myself being in the sport of powerlifting. Depending on the federation or depending on the ranking system, I was ranked number 1 in my weight class. And it's a pretty humbling thing to feel like you're achieving what you were born to do. Like, man, I'm working really hard at this and I'm getting the results. But really, that was the precursor to the potential. The lessons that powerlifting taught me, the lessons that strength acquisition taught me, the lessons that working for Sorinex taught me, the lessons that conversations that weren't on the main stage taught me, the lessons that people who were loyal to me when I should not and could not even be loyal to myself for the actions I was taking taught me. When I fell and they took me to the hospital, the doctors thought I was in a head-end car collision. They thought that my knees had buckled from a front-end collision. Lo and behold, the guy picks my leg up, and my hamstring stayed flat, and my ankle came up about 45 degrees, so I knew I was in some trouble. And I was sitting there with the idea, I'm going to come back. I am going to come back. And I made a commitment to myself that day that I would. And the doctor came in and told me I wouldn't walk for 10 months. So I got on Google, looked around, found a competition 10 months to the day. A big one in Australia. So I was going back to where I had just come from, where I'd just been successful, where I'd just won, where I knew people were my friends, where I knew people respected me, where I knew people would cheer for me and root for me. And I was going to make that public announcement, and I was going to keep my promise. I did it. I also competed 3 months to the day, and I walked 10 minutes after he said I wouldn't walk for 10 months with a nerve block. So I understood in some ways that my mind could go places that I didn't think it could go. My mind could hold a standard for myself if I convinced it to, rather than self-loathing, self-deprecating behaviors, all the negative things that can creep in at night, right? So I decided right then I needed to figure out who I was. And from 2014 to 2017, I put on a pretty good show. I pretended that I was still that guy, that I was just in pursuit of what I had been and who I had been and where I had gone, the things I had achieved. I was nowhere near as strong as I once was. It was so much harder to maintain the strength that I held. But through 11 surgeries, and after the day before my 12th, I pulled 840, which is a lifetime PR. I squatted 1 pound more than I fell with, which gave me some sense of completion of the circle. I came back, and the thing that broke me, I beat it. I bench pressed 602 pounds in competition raw. All of these things felt meaningless. Every single one of them. There was no joy in completing the circle. There was no hype in pulling 840 because I knew one day I would have to pull 845. And I was tired. I was worn out with myself. I was worn out with the life I was living. I was worn out with the lies I was telling. I was worn out with everything. So I decided that I needed to do something. I was listening to some Rogan podcasts at the time. I found a lot of comfort in that because, as I've told people recently in conversation, I think he's an important person because he shares a lot of information from a lot of different sides, and he ultimately gives you the chance to determine what you believe or what you want to look into and that kind of thing. So one day I'm listening to this, and a fellow by the name of Cam Hanes comes on. I had no idea who Cam Hanes was, very little adult effort into hunting at this point. I'd done it when I was younger, but I'd really never fallen in love with the process because it was a very different thing. It was just kill the animal, get the meat, that's fine. But I was on somewhat, and I hate this term because everybody bastardizes it and half the people mean it. I was on a spiritual journey of sorts, okay? Looking for ways to define myself through new activities, through new things. So I'm looking for anything. So Cam Hanes is on there. He's talking about running. Follow him on Instagram, and I'm seeing this dude just gets up, and it's like, it doesn't matter if it hurts. It doesn't matter if it stings. It doesn't matter if it's raining. Keep hammering. And for a guy that was looking for something to latch onto, that was it. Just get up and keep hammering. So I started running. And I started walking, to be honest. I was 340 pounds, and I went out for a walk one day, and I was like, I wonder if I can walk a mile. And that's a true statement because at one point I remember going Christmas shopping, and I realized why the park benches were spaced how they were. Because it was like the dangling carrot. Like, it wasn't that far, but it was just far enough that if you're a fat ass like me, it was still a lot of effort. So it was just get to the next one, just get to the next one and sit down and sit down. And I was embarrassed. I was trying to buy Christmas presents, and I couldn't even walk one length of the mall. Now, granted, my knee was in pretty poor shape, but I was in very poor shape. So start walking, get halfway, because I told this story too. I would go away from my truck, and then the only way out of what I was doing was back at my truck. So it's a pretty good way to make sure that you walk the distance you want to go. So I walked a half mile, and I thought, if I get back to my truck, that's a mile. So I thought, let's see if I can walk a mile first. I'll sit down, take my time, I'll just get back when I get there. So I finished my mile, and I turned around and I was like, well, I walked one, can I jog it? So I jogged back to my truck. I was like, I just jogged a mile. So, typical me, I wanted to run a 5K the next day. And I did it. And then I did it again and again and again. And then I was like, I wonder if I can do 7 miles. So this is like 7 days into running at 335 pounds, because I think I lost 5 pounds the first minute that I started moving. So, but I did it. And I kept doing that kind of stuff, and I kept doing that kind of stuff. And I want to talk to you coaches about something important. My coach, Bunky Harkleroad, was a guy that I got in a fist fight with. We shoved each other. I mean, I'm a middle schooler. This is Kentucky. These things happen. But this man loved me, and this man still loves me, and I love him because he saw things in me that he saw in himself as a child. He was rowdy. He was rebellious. He was argumentative. He had a sailor's mouth at 10 years old. That was me. Like, I defied every single coach I had because I didn't understand why we were losing. That was them, not us. You're the leader, fix it. But he taught us how to win. He taught me how to be a winner. He taught me how to believe in myself. And to tell you the story that equates to the story I was just telling, it was 7th grade, and he was the 8th grade coach, so he was kind of over all the middle school operations, and I was a jackass. If the 7th grade team beat the 8th grade team, I never stopped letting anybody with an earshot know it. And we beat them that day. And I was letting him know it, and I was letting them know it, and I was letting the cheerleaders know it, and I was letting all the 6th graders know it. I was telling everybody. He said, Lilly, on the line. I said, I'm not running. I said, we won, I'm not running. This was a theme in my basketball career. I had a lot of these confrontations throughout it. So I get on the line, and he said, now everybody else on the line. And he made my teammates sprint while I stood there. And I said, it's not going to work, coach. I said, I did the crime, I'll do the deed. And he said, well, you've got to run for all of them then. You've got to run their volume yourself. I said, bring it, let's go. He said, next thing you got to do is you got to run like this. Your elbows dropping below your shoulder line. You can't get up here. Your elbows drop below your shoulder line, you start over. I said, bring it. So I did it. I ran every single sprint as hard as I could possibly. In between vomit, my nose started bleeding at one point, but I didn't stop. And the one thing he kept saying is, boy, don't drop your hands. Boy, don't drop your hands. Because the critic became the encouragement. He saw how bad I wanted to do it, how bad I wanted to get my teammates out of it, how bad I wanted ownership of my own actions. And I finished. And he hugged me and he cried like babies. So the morning that I get up to run a half marathon, I got it was less than a tenth of a mile in, and I was like, excuse my language, what kind of a pussy starts something with half in the title? My half marathon became a marathon. So this was all well and good, and when I hit the half marathon point, 13.1, I was like, man, I am the shit. So I keep running. Feet start getting heavier, feet start getting hotter, because I started this thing at 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, by 8:30 in the morning, it was already summer sun, and it was a different kind of ball game. No water. Who needs water? What kind of pussy starts a race with water? That kind of deal, you know. So I ended up running on. I get to mile 18, and I literally just bend over myself. And I'm standing there, and I'm like, all right, how far is an Uber? And how much is it? And do I have that in my bank account? But I decided to use my phone for a better purpose. It was a little after 8 o'clock, which meant it was a little after 5 o'clock in California. Coach Harkleroad lives in California. I called him, and I knew he would answer the phone. And that meant a lot. So, shaking a little bit here. He answered the phone. He said, my man, Lilly, what's up? I said, well, I'm halfway into the half beyond the half marathon that is going to become a marathon. He said, say that again. He's like, I just woke up. And I said, well, I'm halfway through the half after the half of the marathon. And he's like, slow down. I said, I started doing a half marathon, and it's going to be a marathon by the time it's over. I'm at mile 18, and I'm dying. I hear clop, clop. He said, I guess we're running then, aren't we? So he gets out of bed, puts his shoes on, said, give me a minute. And I hear, he said, you running, boy? I said, I guess I am now. And he ran on the phone with me in my earbuds until I got back to my truck. And he said, you never let your hands down. You keep running. And he's been that guy to me throughout my whole life. And if I could impart any encouragement to any of you coaches, be that to one kid. Because it made all the difference in my life to have somebody that believed in me, that pushed in me, that understood me, even when I didn't understand myself. I think that's the pivotal job of a coach, is to bring the best out of people because of the failures of ourselves. If we can look at an athlete and improve them because of my failure, I save them the heartbreak and the time. So props to Coach Bunky, props to Terrence, and then also Judd Logan. Judd Logan was somebody who tremendously impacted me. When I came to SummerStrong for the first time, I walked in this door thinking, these people are here to see me. These people are here because Brandon Lilly is here, third person. What I realized in the moment when I walked through and Bert says, Brandon, I'd love you to meet my old coach, buddy, my mentor, Judd Logan. He's a 4-time U.S. Olympian. This guy was a Special Forces Green Beret. This guy was a Special Forces SEAL, on and on and on. And I was like, just, hi, guys. But I learned that it wasn't big dick in me. It wasn't them putting me down. It wasn't them shoving me under the table as just a powerlifter. It was open arms to be a brother, to be a part of the Bosco brotherhood, the Bosco family, the Sorinex family. So when I speak to you today, I speak from a different place. I speak from the echoes of Judd Logan, from that moment of understanding that I am no more and I am no less. I'm a part. And I think that's a pivotal moment in my life, because I think it started to shed some of the ego. It started to let go of some of that. Here's a 4-time Olympian talking to me about his favorite cheeseburger when he was in Germany. You know, like, it didn't matter how far he threw. He got there. It didn't matter. I guarantee you, not one of you SOBs that's told me, I loved you as a lifter, can tell me how much I squatted, or how much I totaled, or how much I bench pressed, or the fact that when I benched 600 pounds, I talked to my son, and I told him, hey, Daddy benched 600 pounds, and he said, yeah, I just built some Legos. The people that you think care do not care about the achievement. They will learn from your process. They will learn from the things that you do, the way that you are, and the person that you become. Be leaders. Be brave. Be bold. Always take the bull by the horns. So, this running life was somewhat short-lived. It was long. I mean, you could see there were some videos in there of me running around doing kind of things, but it wasn't my thing. It was Cam Haines' thing that I needed at the moment that led to the next moment. And that's what I meant when I said, every person you meet, every opportunity you have is a potential open door to something new. So I started rock climbing. Loved it. I was going crazy with it. I think Ingrid was doing some rock climbing at the time, and we were communicating about that. And I was like, oh, I love it. I'm obsessed with it. I'm doing 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, right off the jump. So I just achieved another color level because the gym I was going to, they had color zones, and you know, green was the easiest, and then you just kind of work your way up. Well, after 2 hours of climbing and like 457 failures, I decided that I was committed to getting this one grab. And it was kind of a deal where my knee was a little bit compressed for the shape that it was in. This leg was up here, and this hand was here, and I had to get an under grab like that. Well, because of my knee being in the position that it was, because it was weak the way that it was, and my upper body was stronger, I depended on that under pull, tore my bicep. Chino, Big Chino, JP Vicente. I've hunted out there many, many times. He challenged me just before that, but really after the injury. He said, I guess you're going to have to figure it out and get here and kill a deer. So the running led to the rock climbing, led to the challenge of hunting. And once I started picking my bow back up, once I started getting the PT in to get it done, man, I was hooked. And it wasn't for the sake of killing an animal. That's part of it. I don't say I harvest, I kill animals. But I eat the meat, and I cherish the moments. I love those times. Bo Sandoval and I have had some of the most intimate, non-intimate moments that you could have as two men in a field. I mean, that guy, we've spent some time out there, Bert's been out there, we put some miles on the ground together, and when you do that, when you share that struggle, you find out who people are. And I'm so grateful for Chino because that was a propulsion to the next thing. Hunting became the thing that I could do through effort, and I could control how much I shot my bow. I could control how much I trained for it. I could control how many hikes I took, how much weight I had in my ruck. I could do all of those things. So as I figure out how to do things and they kind of get less emphasis on the chaos of it all because it becomes part of your process, I found jiu-jitsu. I found a great, great gym called AFS Academy in Richmond, Kentucky on Big Hill Drive. This place is phenomenal, not because of the jiu-jitsu, which is phenomenal, but because of the people. Oddly enough, people think, man, you have so many friends, you have this amazing life, you get to go all these places. I can tell you that I am one of the most individualistic, lonely people at times. Because the thing is, I always leave and the great people stay. I have another destination to go to, another meeting to attend, another gym to go to, another person to sit down and just listen to what's going on in their life. So I'm a leaver. And that's a tough, tough thing. If you've never done it, believe me, when you go from one place of love to one place of love, and you're the one that leaves, you're the heartbreaker, right? These people that all that you have seen on Instagram or all the moments that you see, that was never there for me at home. I've very, very seldom ever had a tribe at home, and AFS became my tribe. They became people that I sweat with, that I bled with, that I headbutted some of them and twisted some arms and had mine twisted back. But again, through shared struggle, you find out who people are. And the oversweeping message of finding out who people are is you learn a lot about yourself because we're not that different. We're not that unique and special and so uncommon that we can't relate to anyone else. So AFS became my local family. They became another reason to train. Hunting became another reason to train. And all in this mix, back to my friend Terrence, he was programming for me. He was giving me challenging journal entries. We were having challenging discussion throughout the day. He was the first person I ever knew to use voice notes more than text message. But I cherish those messages to this day, and I listen to them often because they are just as powerful, just as true, and just as real today as they were prior to his death. Excuse me. I started to see my body transform. I started to understand that I was only strong in one plane. You put a bar on my back, I can squat it. You put a bar in my hands, lay me down, and I can bench it. You put a bar on the ground, and I'll pick it up. I was good at those three things. I was good at nothing else. Nothing else, maybe except the dedication to get my meals in. I didn't call the people I needed to call. I didn't do the things I needed to do. I didn't check on the people I needed to check on because I was self-centric about being maximally strong and doing everything it took to do that. And I used to think, if I lived past 50, I didn't try hard enough. Greg and I talked about this. There's some kind of like puffed up arrogance to think that powerlifting platform is some type of battlefield. It's not. And I tell anybody in here that thinks it is, pursue it. Pursue it within reason, push it to the max, but let it be a part of your life. Let the things that you love be a part of your life so that they enhance your life, not that they ruin your life. Not that they dictate sadness around the people because you're so committed to this one thing. Because what I've learned over time is the most successful people I know involve their tribe in what they do. They win more because they're supported. That lone wolf bullshit, self-made bullshit, is all bullshit. There's not one person in this room that's self-made, not one fucking person. At all. You're the product of your parents, you're the product of your absence of your parents, you're the product of teachers, you're the product of your friends, you're a product of heartbreak, you're a product of good times, everything in between. You didn't do all that alone. So start cultivating people. Start bringing people into your life like Terrence that will challenge you, that will ask you questions that you need to be asked because nobody else will say it because you're Brandon Lilly, the powerlifter. Have the balls, or whatever, to say the things you need to say to the people that need to hear it and mean it. Be convincing in what you say because it's honest, not because it sounds good or sounds pretty or it's the trending hashtag. Fuck that. We have to be better. I had to be better. So I started evolving myself. I started training myself. I started pushing myself forward just to see how far I could go. I got down to 219 pounds, fairly lean, slightly too much muscle loss, but I got there. 220 was the goal. I was 130 pounds down. I was 220 pounds when I was a collegiate thrower. I was extremely athletic, and I felt good, and I felt good again. That was massive. Getting out of the bed pain-free or relatively pain-free was massive. And oddly enough, as my body was changing, I was talking to Terrence, and I said, hey, man, I would really, really love to put some muscle back on. He said, brother, I hear you. And that was it. It was on. We were going to put some muscle back on. So he started integrating some things, and I said, hey, man, I was checking out this guy, Greg Walsh, and I saw, he said he does maces, and he was like, yes, Greg is brilliant. And he talked about having a mace and having read Greg's stuff and having corresponded with Greg for some time. And Terrence was the genesis of the encouragement to pursue Greg's work while still working with him. I started training a little differently, started incorporating some mace stuff, started reading Greg's stuff, and unfortunately, Terrence passed. October 27th, 2020. I'm not sure if it's the 27th or the 26th because there's a time difference in South Africa and here, but it was one of the two. I got the phone call at 3:30 in the morning that I didn't answer, and I didn't call back until 8:30 that morning because I knew what it was. So, having found Greg's work and having felt tremendous loss, I saw a potential for an open door. I'd started corresponding with Greg somewhat. I kind of told him where I was. I told him that Terrence had passed, which of course he knew. I needed some direction, I needed some time, and I wasn't sure if I could do it. Because after I hurt myself, I'm going to tell you something I don't think I've ever told a population before, told a few people. But after my knee injury, I could not make myself train. I would go out in the garage and I was like, for 45 minutes, motherfucker, you're going to sit here until you get your ass up and do something. And many, many days, those 45-minute sessions were me sitting there feeling sorry for myself. And I felt that feeling starting to creep back in. Because Terrence had been a lighthouse. Terrence had been a catalyst. Terrence had been, he had really immersed himself as part of my family through a telephone. Technology's not all bad, folks. It's how you use it and what you use it for. And Terrence might have been the best at it in the world because a text message never sounds the same as someone's voice, and he understood that. A voice message never sounds the same as a guy dancing around in his kitchen, flopping a tomahawk steak and clipping tongs while he tells you how much he loves you and he wishes that you were there to eat that food. You will never get that same joy and that same pleasure of hearing that message as you will seeing it. So do better. Don't just passively text people. Don't just passively call people. When you call somebody, mean it. When you text somebody, mean it. But go the next step. Send them a voice message. Send them a video message. Let them know how you're doing. Be honest. So I started talking to Greg. Started looking at his stuff. And like many of you, I'm sure I didn't quite understand what I was looking at. But I'm me. I asked questions. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know why, and I wanted to know how. Lo and behold, start working with the mace, start finding my groove again. Muscle starts coming back on. Stability starts improving. Training starts improving. Thinking gets more critical. Writing gets more heavy. And all of that because of other men that helped me find my way when I was lost. I didn't know where I was going, but now at least I knew where I was. So I kept going. I kept finding my way, to this day, to this moment. Right now, I'm 1,085 days into a journey. And I very much believe that I was 1,000 days in the hole. Somebody asked me, man, you're so great. The things you have done are so amazing. You look so awesome. You're so strong. You're so fit. No, I'm not. I am not near the level of the things I will achieve. I am not near the level of education that I will achieve. I am not near the level of love that I can achieve. I'm not near the best version of myself. I am a master of nothing. I am absolutely beholden to no one except the idea of who I can be and what I believe in and what I'm willing to work towards. And that's a freeing feeling. It's a very powerful feeling to know that this isn't over. I don't stand here as an expert. I don't stand here. I can literally walk out this door and fuck up my life faster than anybody you've ever seen. I promise you. Because I've done it 1,000 times. And that's why it's taken 10,000 times to get it right, to do better, to make the choices. I'd like to share a few quotes with you, by the way. I wrote this in my journal, since some people think that I have these profound journal entries and that leads to profound journal writing. October 19th, 2020 at 7:39 p.m., Toboggan is holding on for dear life. That's it some days. Like, I don't know what the hell that means, but if the toboggan was holding on, I was really holding on for dear life. But the one that actually followed that one, I'm just a normal guy that wants to do great things. I want to help insignificant people become significant. I want to help ugly people feel beautiful, and I want to help weak people become strong. And I'll leave you with a quote as well. Just to simplify the +1, for me, every day, every encounter, every meal, every beverage, every thought comes down to a +1 or a -1. Nothing in this life is static. Nothing in this life is neutral. You either gain or you regress. +1 all day, stack them. Be a +1 to every person you encounter, most importantly, yourself. So that became the philosophy that I held to, that I cling to now. If I cannot see the end of the day and I don't know how I'm going to get there, what do I do next? What's that one step in front of me? Where are my feet solid on the ground? What do I do then? I reassess, take stock of where I moved, and take another one. And keep going, and do not think that a step backwards is a -1 if it gets you going in the right direction. If walking away from a broken relationship to walk towards yourself is not a -1, that's a +1. Yes, life is hard. Yes, life hurts. Yes, things are difficult. Yes, decisions can be made and be unmade. But all the things that you need to consider is this the best thing for me? Is this the best thing for the people around me? Is this the best thing for the direction that I want to go? Actually, I lied. I'm going to do a couple more quotes. This was May 21st, 2021 at 8:57 in the morning. Must have had some good bubs in my coffee that day. It said, what if God gave you life as a test to see what good you do with the tools you're given? Not just by birth, but by the lessons, the experiences, and the reflections. What if heaven wasn't reserved for those that ask forgiveness? What if heaven were revealed once you earned it? I struggle with the idea that we were born to suck. Why be born at all if that's the case? What if comfort wasn't the reward, but comfort being the wolf in sheep's clothing? What if success wasn't something you could show off? What if success meant you got to live another day because the day before was so fucking hard? What if we are a plague on the potential of our own greatness? And then lastly, this is the last one for sure, but it kind of became the genesis of this talk. It became the genesis of all the things that I felt about Terrence, the things that I feel about Greg Walsh, the phone calls, wherever Casey Bard is, that made, for some reason, when he knew I was struggling and said, man, keep going. Start something like Peace, Love, and Meat, a passion project. I'll do it with you. And then I'll walk away and start my own thing, and you can run with it. Like, you need those people. You need Scottville Cortons that call. You need Bert Sorens. You need Leslie Sorens. You need Leslie's, Ingrid's, and everybody else in this room. People that love you will show you that they love you over time. So you better show it back. So I leave you with this, and I thank you for listening. I speak of legacy. This was August 26, 2019. This was about 60 days into my journey. June 1st of 2019 was decided that I was going to live or pursue the life of a 75-year-old man. I wanted to outlive my grandfather. I wanted to outlive my great-grandfather. And I want to outlive however long my dad lives. So it became important to me that health was the goal. Focus on myself, build a better life through food, beautiful food, draw people in if you're a loner through good food, and I've certainly done that. I've had amazing meals with some of you guys. Learn to cook. People will show up. Ain't nobody going to turn down a good T-bone steak, I promise. But last, thank you. I speak of legacy. I speak of success. Hoping to learn from those that I give such distinction. The only thing I've realized is that I am nothing. Not in a sense of meaningless, in a sense that my story is not over. The pen is still tightly pursed between my fingers, and I failed so many times in my life at times that I believe that encapsulated the fact that I was a failure. I've justified breaking promises because I've had promises broken. I've lied because I've been lied to myself. I couldn't love because I didn't feel loved. But that's all excuses. It's an easier way. It's a quitter's way. It's a loser's way. To be the victim or to assume that life is static, to assume that one closed door means that all doors are closed. So yes, I speak of legacy. I speak of legendary and I speak of greatness. And I've spoken them today plainly. I've spoken them with a clear conscience, and I've spoken them with the truth as I know it. I'm not defined by my yesterdays. They laid the track to build my tomorrows. So on broken knees I stand, from a broken heart I love, and from a dark mind I find the light. My story is just beginning. Thank you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.